We have two guests today who are writers, who draw, and are doing their level best to keep Austin weird. Let's welcome in, if you will, for a one-of-a-kind Creative Mornings conversation, Edward Carey and Austin Kleon.
Hey, y'all. Hi, Edward.
Hello.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I would like to just give a little bit of context. So when Ben reached out to me and asked me if I would come back and interview someone for Creative Mornings, I had a long list of people. And then he said, well, then he told me the theme, which is procrastination. And in my book, Steal Like an Artist, I have a page that says practice productive procrastination. And so I started thinking about, you immediately came to mind, but for another reason, a very particular reason, which is I have a clipping. I don't know if you remember this piece from 2016. I have a clipping from the New York Times where you wrote about your process. And if I could get it in front of the actual camera here so everyone can read it, it says, "This is how I make a book, by hiding from writing by drawing, or the other way around." And so I immediately thought I have to get Edward, because I think we are similar in that we use multiple forms to the art of dodging one or the other is how the work actually gets made. And so I'm also just a big fan. And I wanted to start out and ask you, pictures and words, were they always together for you? Did you ever go through a time where they were divorced? Or have they always come this way? Has your work always come this way? What is your story when it comes to drawing and writing?
They've actually always been together for me. I couldn't imagine doing one without the other. And my first novel came about because for years I've been drawing a rather unhappy looking individual wearing white gloves. And I didn't know who he was. And so I thought, well, who is he? And from that, a novel was born. And so I always do both. I can't imagine not doing both. But for my first novel, there was less art involved. Now there's more and more and more and more. So yeah, they have to be together. Otherwise, I'm not interested.
One of the things I find particularly fascinating, I don't know, when did you, is Little, so Little is I think Little was actually the first book of yours I read, believe it or not. And for anyone watching, this is just a wonderful book. But the thing I really love about this book is that the drawings are actually by the main character. And I wanted to ask you, when did that idea come? Have you done that in your other books, or what was the impetus for that idea to actually have a character do the drawing?
Well, that was the first time I've done it. I've only done it twice, but I wanted to. It's a first person account of the life of Madame Tussauds and of Waxworks fame, and I love her, and I worked in Madame Tussauds as a young man, which was the best bad job I've had. I've had many bad jobs, but that was a really great one. And as I researched her, she went through the French Revolution and knew Marat, Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, all these people. And I just thought, oh, how can we get her in there? How can we have her vision, not just words, but if we could just see little drawings all the time, her way of saying, I still count, because she's basically a servant for much of the book, and say, I still count, I still count. And each drawing was her saying, I still count, I'm still here, this is me. And so the drawings mounted up, and that was her, and it was proof of her existence. But for that book, I made all sorts of other things. So this, I don't know if you can see this sort of wooden woman behind me. I carved her. She's the exact size of Madame Tussauds, and she's fully articulated. You can move her arms and legs. And my wife very kindly had a haircut so she could have some hair. So for I wanted to get lost in it. Part of that, it's when you're working on something, you want to get lost in it. And one of the ways of doing it is creating art, as well as the words. But for the first person, it was just, if I could do art by the character, not me.
Right. So that leads me into your next book after that, which is the newest book, which is The Swallowed Man. Now, The Swallowed Man is really fantastic. 8 years ago, when I gave the first Creative Mornings talk, I was a new dad, and a lot of the sort of talk was about my sort of struggle as a young dad, was sort of in the background of the talk. This book is the Pinocchio story told from the perspective of Geppetto in The Whale. Now, what is incredible to me is that this book was written before the pandemic. I find that this book takes on a whole new relevance, thinking about what we've all been going through as we all sort of exist in our own bellies of the whale. I wanted to ask you, because I reread the Collodi original after I read this, and I felt very much that upon reading, the thing I related to the most in the Pinocchio story is that Pinocchio is really a monster. He's a monstrous little beast, and he doesn't ask to be here. And he's very naughty, and he gets into a lot of trouble. And he sort of, I wanted to ask you, what brought you to Geppetto in particular? Because to me, I resonated so much to the story as a father. And I wanted to know what brought you to Geppetto.
Well, it was a simple thing. I know the book and I love the book. And as you say, Pinocchio is a monster, but kind of everybody is a monster in that book. And the joy about him is he is the most lively, the most full of vitality. And he's always begging, can I please be real? Can I be a human being? And he's longing to be a human being, and spends much of the book saying, what is it like to be a human being? He's like the patron saint of objects is Pinocchio. And I just thought, now Geppetto is actually asking the same question inside the whale, am I still a human being? Having been stuck inside the belly of this creature for 2 years, he's in there. And I just thought, oh my God, Collodi puts him inside. It's an enormous shark in the book. He puts him inside the shark because he's no use to the narrative. Just hold there, Geppetto. I'll catch up with you later. I don't want you now. Just stay put. All right. And he can't go anywhere. And he says, Collodi says nothing about that experience. And I just thought, oh my God, what would it be like 2 years inside the belly of this thing? And so I thought, I was given a commission by the Collodi Foundation to do an art exhibition, to make art that had to be linked to Pinocchio. And as I read and reread and reread and reread, I thought, yes, it's got to come from the belly of the whale, and the art I make has to be the art that he made whilst he was inside the belly, because I thought, he would have to, he's an artist, after all, Geppetto. He made his son, his greatest piece of art. And so I just thought, I'm going to make the art that he would make, and would make art. This is what, Creative Mornings, Austin, it keeps us going. Where would we be without it? We'd be nuts. And I think Geppetto comes in and out of sanity as he's writing it. And he also comes to terms with what it is to be a father, and has a longing for his son. If you only know the Walt Disney version, you're not getting the full darkness and strangeness of the story, which is beautiful and haunting.
And it's an interesting book because he wrote the first part. If I'm not mistaken, he wrote the first half, and Pinocchio, spoiler alert, actually ends up hanging from a tree. That's the end of the story. And then it was an example of how the audience clamored for more, and he continued the story, which I find really fascinating.
Yeah, it's like Sherlock Holmes.
Yes. So like you can't kill him off. So something you said, so the thing about Pinocchio that's really fascinating to me, I want to ask you a little bit about family, because I am a huge fan of your wife, uh, Elizabeth McCracken, who also has a new book out that's fantastic. And she's a fabulous writer. She probably writes some of the best sentences of anyone who is around right now. But the interesting thing to me about Pinocchio is there's no women. And Pinocchio is a piece of wood. He starts off his life as a piece of wood with a voice in him. And I don't know if you're familiar with Alison Gopnik's book, The Gardener and the Carpenter. But there's a book called The Gardener and the Carpenter. And in the book, Alison Gopnik posits that there's sort of these two modes of being a parent. There's a mode in which you see yourself as a carpenter. And I don't necessarily subscribe to this, by the way, but the idea that you shape your children, that you find a piece of wood and you shape it into what you want it to be. And then there's more of a gardening mode of parenting where you supply the soil and the atmosphere, and then the plant grows into what it wants to grow into. And so I think it's kind of interesting to look at the Pinocchio story through this sort of lens of like, our children, do we shape our children and then they shape us? Are our children plants? What sort of, the whole idea of being a parent. And I just wanted to ask you in particular, because I know you're a father. What is it like? What is your family life like? What's it like to be married to another creative person? What's it like to be married to another writer? And how do your children, because they're a little bit older than mine, do you get the sense from them? Are they intensely I mean, all children are creative, but what are they drawn to as people, if you're comfortable about talking about that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, our kids are always busy doing all sorts of different things. Like last night, one was doing rehearsals for a play, and the other we were watching the other one in a play. I mean, so they're always doing stuff, and they're busy. We bought my daughter a typewriter, and you can just hear her clacking away. And she said, "What are you doing?" "I'm writing my novel. Leave me alone." And my son just suddenly decided he was going to make a ton of cutouts of black paper. So he had these silhouettes, and he created amazing monsters, and and it's great. So they're busy doing all that, and it's delightful, and it's actually kept them sane, creating during this awful year we've all been through. And being married to another writer is fabulous. I mean, I have to, I mean, I know I have to say that, but it's a kind of delight. We push each other forwards, and so your son, the heading here is procrastination. I think one of the ways we stop each other from procrastinating is going, how many books have you published? Oh, damn it. And get on with the next project, and push it, a little friendly competition. But right at the beginning of this pandemic, it was the horror of, how do you fill this time? And how do you fill it usefully? Not in the endless King Lear was written by William Shakespeare during a play, but to keep sane, like Geppetto. And I think we all four helped each other just by doing bits and pieces and showing it to each other, and giving each other enough space to find our own space, because our kids are older than yours. We've got a 12 and 13-year-old who will be 14 on Sunday. And they're now in that place, and it's kind of joyful. They just go off and do their own things. And it's been great. And they're very good with each other, thank God, which is nice.
I love to hear that. I mean, because my kids are still intensely creative. I have a musician, and then I have a budding cartoonist, and of course they're into all sorts of other things. I've always been interested from a very early age. I got married very young. I got married when I was like 22 or 23, and I was always, as a young writer, looking for models of happily married creative people, and for models of, particularly if you're a young man, I think that, art and family are often posed in opposition to each other. And I feel very lucky that I was introduced early on to writers who said, no, actually, the family and the writing, it's all one. And I think in particular about J.G. Ballard, who wrote, there's the Cyril Connolly line that haunts a lot of people, the pram in the hall is the enemy of art. And J.G. Ballard said the opposite. He said, my kids have been nothing but an inspiration to me. To go into their worlds, to see the way that they look at the world has been sort of the blessing of my work. And that has sort of been the experience of my own. I mean, I think the one thing that we all sort of have as creative people is we're able to like hold on to a little bit of our childhood through the work. But I found that my children have inspired a little bit of friendly competition. Because my son, when I was working on, I forget what book I was working on, but I used to come back in the house at the end of the day and he'd be drawing. He'd look up and say, what did you make today, Papa? And so I love hearing that. I think there are so many people out there that really, I get that a lot, that question of how to balance parenting and making art. And I know that you were off feeding your children off screen as this was going. So I did want to ask you though, because you've all been busy during quarantine, I was hoping you could show us or talk about the project you've taken on during quarantine, because you've been doing a wonderful drawing a day and posting it to Instagram. Can you talk about what was the impulse of doing that, and what's been the result? What's happened through the project?
Yeah, so I was in London when all this chaos started happening, and Elizabeth and the kids were supposed to join me. We were going to go up to Edinburgh for spring break, and it was clear that wasn't going to happen. So I sprinted back and had a weird flight, and it was just as everybody was beginning to shun everybody else, and it was very strange and a bit frightening, of course. And so we got home, and the novel I had been working on was a novel that was really difficult, and it was very dark, and it just seemed to be too difficult for me to pursue under these circumstances. It just wasn't right for now, and I'll get back to it. But it was dark, and I needed a bit of light, frankly. And I just said to myself, I'm always drawing. I'm sure you, just like you, Austin, I can't stop. It's one thing that keeps me sane. And sometimes I just let the pencil just go where the pencil seems to want to go. And I drew, I don't know if I can find them actually. I think I probably can. I've got them all in front of me here. But so I drew the first drawing, which is this guy. And I called him a determined young man. And I thought, okay, so I post sometimes I put my drawings up on Instagram, on Twitter, and so I put him up, and I said, without even meaning it, I said, I'm going to do a drawing a day until this is over. I thought, you can do this? Yeah, what day is it? It's Monday. It'll be over by Thursday, surely. And so off I went, and now I've got stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of drawings, and I'm now on 407. That's how many days since it started, and so I've just carried on doing it, and so it's been actually very strange I thought it wouldn't be much of a commitment. Quit drawing now, no problem. But actually, there are days going, oh my God, you nearly forgot it. This would be terrible to have gone 300 days and then stopped it. And I thought, getting up to a year, surely you'll stop at a year, but it's not over. So come on, man, don't be lazy. And what's been very nice is people have written and saying, I really like pangolins. Could you draw me a pangolin? And I said, yes, of course, you must have a pangolin. And so, someone said, we have something else. Yeah, I need a moose. Yes, you must have a moose. Or Virginia Woolf, please, or something like that. And so I would do it. And so it was a sort of conversation with people at the same time. I'm just going to pick out a drawing from just random. Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know. It's just all sorts. So this one, sometimes I do creatures. This one is, I called him, I can't remember, an emperor something or other. He was drawn on April Fool's Day. And I said, this is a certain creature that exists on the island of Sant'Elena, where Napoleon was imprisoned for the rest of his life. And I said, there you go, this creature is there. But, so it was just anything, every day. I don't know, like yesterday I drew a sea dragon. Today, I've no idea what I'm going to draw. But as it evolves, it was just light and nice, and it was just fun. But then America went into such turmoil, and everything became increasingly sinister. And so then I couldn't just be drawing, just sort of fluffy things. I had to actually meet what we were all going through. So then the drawings changed, and they're occasionally political, and they're occasionally reflecting this whole year of what we've gone through. So I was stuck. I nearly stopped when all the marches were going on, and with all the police brutality, I didn't know what to do. And I thought, this is no longer relevant. And then I drew George Floyd, and then Breonna Taylor, and then that seemed the only way forward then. And so it's changed. So sometimes these drawings, like when RBG died, I had to draw her immediately. And when John Lewis died, it's a grief, the outpouring for who we've lost as well during this time. So it swerves, it goes all over the place. And I didn't ever think it would do that. But one of the other things that it's done is I've fallen in love with the pencil. I always loved the pencil, but now I really love the pencil. And you would think, oh my God, it's just me and a bloody pencil again. Yet again, another pencil. But actually, I love it. And it's so, it can just do, it can do anything. And I feel like here's the drawing. I did, this drawing was done on day 365. And by coincidence, it was the exact day that I had my second vaccine shot. I don't know, it was just one of those weird things. It sort of coincided just at the same time. But it's been a sort of strange, it's been a strange dialogue, and it's actually become a journal, really, of this, like Defoe's Journal of a Plague Year. But it's become my scribbling journal of what it's been. So when we had that terrible winter storm, we had a beautiful green parakeet was dead on our garage roof after it. And so I drew the parakeet. And so it's done all sorts of things. And I've drawn all, the four of us in this house, I've drawn us, our fellow inmates during this time.
You've said so many things that we could talk for a million years about. The first thing I wanted to pull out is falling in love with your materials, and letting your materials take you where they want to go. There is something about, I think that's what I love so much about your work, is there's that sense of the hand, and the hand leads the mind just as much as the mind leads the hand. The other thing I think is interesting that you said is this idea that as artists or creative people, we feel like we should be doing more. But you have to do what you know how to do. I think is how Fiona Apple put it. You know, she said, I'm doing when she released Fetch the Bolt Cutters last year, which I thought was one of the greatest albums I've heard in ages. She said, it feels weird to release this right now, but this is what I know how to do. And I have found that enormously comforting to myself, is to focus on what I know how to do and to try to, I think the beautiful thing about drawing is that it forces you to actually really look at the thing that you're trying to draw. And I wondered if you had any, and the other thing about, you know, the drawings becoming a journal is, I think that people think that they have to, you can't help autobiography. You know, your work will always be a kind of journal or a diary of what you do. You can't help, you know, people worry, especially young people, if you're listening, I mean, people worry about style. They worry about, you know, what's my thing? Your thing is inevitable, I think, is the thing that I've learned from so many of the artists I admire, is that your personality will come through the work, you know, sort of no matter what you do. The thing I wanted to ask you, though, is I meet so many people who say, I wish I could draw. And I'm sure you get the same, you know, people, I wish I could write. To me, I wonder, you know, you are a teacher. And so I wanted to ask you, what is the relationship for you of teaching to making? Is teaching a procrastination from the making? Does it take away, or does it give back, or is it both?
It's both, and it's complicated, and it's all those things. The joy of teaching, there's different joys, different to different students. When I'm teaching undergraduates, what is most amazing is seeing a young person finding their voice. You talk about, you know, you're talking about, wow, what am I? What is it? You know, getting hold of that voice. Otherwise you could go through a life without finding it. Yeah. And that's the thrill for that. And it's deeply inspiring. And it's actually, it's kind of fleshy. You know, you were talking earlier about, you know, writers, oh, shun everything, get rid of that pram in the hall. No, open up, for crying out loud. You know, who wants to be stuck on their own in an armchair during a pandemic nonstop? Actually being with other people is joyful, it's pleasant. And actually seeing the students create is enormously exciting and inspiring. Is it procrastinating? Well, I don't know. I mean, it's sometimes hard to manage time. That can be a big monster because teaching takes up a lot of time, and you've got to balance both. If I just taught, I'd be miserable. If I just wrote, I think I would be miserable too. So somewhere there has to be a non-miserable place. And it's about, you know, balancing them both, but also sharing. I mean, you know, we're here to communicate, I think. Isn't it nice to actually, you know, look out of the window and everybody's, you know, you only see part of a face. Where's everybody gone? But now it's beginning to open up again. And oh God, I've seen faces. There are noses again. Thank God. And you know, I've taught for a whole year doing Zoom, and it's been hard, but at least we've been able to do it. And it's not been ideal, and it's far from ideal. I've realized more and more how much teaching you rely on actually that personal space. You can't, there's so much you're missing just having this on a screen, but at least we could do it. And at least, you know, it's been great seeing what work. It feels kind of really precious, the writing that the kids at UT that I've experienced. This is my experience during this time. Now is a good time to write. What else are you going to do? You can't do anything else. Travel in your own mind. You know, there's that great novel by Xavier de Maistre, a Frenchman, who wrote a book called Voyage Around My Room.
Right. Yeah.
Because he was under house arrest. So he went, wow, you know, and it's that line from Hamlet, oh God, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space, were it not that I have bad dreams. we can travel in different ways. So it's been joyful. I've gone so far from your question, Austin. It's
I
terrible.
love it. I want you to go far. I want you to go as far as you want. When you're talking about students finding their voice, I find it in your work. I can see I think young people in particular have this idea that they have to be completely original or individual to find their voice. But the thing that you study all the greats and what you learn, I read a great Goethe quote yesterday. He said, all of my work is 100 different people. He said, it's 1,000 different people that I've known. And your voice to me is really about everything you've soaked up in your life. It's all the books you love, it's the drawing, and you got to take in more. I think that's the thing that for me, it's like, I think a lot of young people, they're like, I'm just going to try to, narrow in and dig within. And it's like, no, bring it all in, because the things you love are you. So I have one more question for you, and then I think we'll open up to questions, if you're okay with that, from the audience. I was going to ask you, as someone who's compelled to draw, as someone who exists in a creative household, do you take breaks? Because I am someone who I would work every day for as long. I would work forever. I have been giving myself Sabbaths, really. Really, like I've been giving myself time off my procrastination is to read. So I guess I'm still working in a weird way, but I think you're never not working as an artist. But I was going to ask you, do you ever give yourself time off? Do you ever give yourself time off to just be and chill?
I'm not very good at it.
I'm not either. I don't think any artists really are, which is why I'm interested in, I have found that giving myself a little time, it doesn't have to be very much. It could be like a day, and then I'm ready to go again.
Yeah. I've got better. I used to be, when the kids were really young, that was different because they took up, so much time. That was different, and you had to be, on top of all that. But now they're older. It's much easier. But I get miserable if I'm not writing or drawing after a while. And now it's been 407 days drawing a day, and I kind of almost don't count that now. That's like, you've got to have coffee in the morning. It's one of those things. But I do. I can go. We used to travel tons, and then I would say, okay, you're not going to do anything, but I would still have a notebook with me, and but then traveling was working. It was finding that inspiration. I love you. Yes, let's go though. Here when you went a couple of spring breaks ago to Amsterdam, and it was just like, give me. And then it was, there was an exhibition at the Rijksmuseum of every single piece of Rembrandt they owned, and it was just like, oh, God. But yeah, no, I'm not very good at that. So when I abandoned that novel or at least put it off, procrastinated with it for a time, I couldn't just do a drawing a day. I've worked in theatre. I've lived in theatres in Eastern Europe, actually lived inside them, and worked as a stage doorkeeper of a West End theatre. And, I've worked in theatre. I've always wanted to write a book set in a theatre. And so I thought, do it. And I set it in Norwich, which is near which is the city I was born nearby. And I've always wanted to write about that. So I wrote a whole novel on that, and I made some. This is a procrastination. I needed to see what the principal character would look like. So I made her. So in 3D, didn't need to, but why not?
Well, I would love to just say to anyone listening and watching what Edward said. If you don't do it, you'll be miserable. I really believe strongly in that. There's a new book out by a woman named Beth Pickens, and Beth, that she's an art coach, and that is what she tells her clients, is that you have got to make your art. If you don't, it's like a phantom limb. You'll feel it, and the thing I learned in the past 8 years from the time I gave the Creative Mornings talk to the time to now, is that if you will be a better, we think that if we put things on hold, you'll be a better parent, you'll be a better friend, you'll be a better worker if you give a little bit of time to your practice, the thing that you really love to do, the thing that makes you feel alive, whether it's playing the piano, whether it's drawing, whatever. So I would love to take questions. I think I could probably look at the chat, but I don't know if Ben or one of those fellas wants to come on and
we're here, but we're happy to have you lead it. I saw one coming by that is a really easy one, Edward. Someone was asking whether you number your drawings, the series that you've done this pandemic. Are they numbered?
Yeah, I did. I put a tiny number in the top corner because every 50 days I lay them all out. We live in a bungalow, and so I'm running out of house at this point.
Same.
So yes, I do number them, and it's gonna be a book in the UK, and so it will just say day, whatever. I don't know. I'm just picking up one at random. Day 399, and this is a Lithuanian monster. So yes, yeah, everything's numbered. Otherwise, I would lose total I wouldn't know what was going on. Yeah.
People ask me all the time about my date stamp, because I do date stamps on my stuff, and they'd be like, "Where do you find a date stamp?" You can find a date stamp in any Home Depot, like any of those Office Depot, like you could buy one on Amazon or wherever. Like date stamps too, folks. Just pop it on there.
I know you do that, Austin, and you both seem to have this same trait where you want to catalog things. Is something that is as a result of your art, or is it the other way around? The dating it help drive it in any way? Because system drive the art.
Well, you're breaking up a little.
We just got that internet is unstable thing.
I think I know what you're asking, though. Is the dating impulse? Where does that come from? I mean, for me, it's purely my bad memory. It's just like if I don't date things. Later on, you are sort of an archaeologist of your own. I'm sort of an archaeologist of my own experience sometimes. I don't know what I'm going through when I'm making the work, and so sometimes if I date it, I can kind of sort of go back, and it has a new meaning if I know when it was made. But it's to me, it's just like an organizational thing. It's just just sort of knowing. I don't know if it's true. That's where mine comes from.
Yeah, I've never dated anything before this, except for drafts of novels, so that I'm not disappearing back to the wrong draft. But otherwise, I all my days were lost. This is the first time I've actually gone, oh my God, that's what a year looks like. And I don't think I'll ever do it again.
Someone asked you, Edward, what will be the signal to stop? What do you think are you going to put an arbitrary end to the daily drawings, or will there be some sort of signal to say, no, this is done now?
Well, I reached 400 about a week ago, and I said, I think I'm going to make it to 500, and then maybe stop. If this pandemic is still being miserable, I may revisit that. I can't say. All I know is I was going to stop at 400, and then I was going to stop at 365. I was going to stop at 300, and then I just thought it still has meaning for me, and people are still asking for different drawings. So I thought, and I said clearly, very foolishly, until all this nonsense is over, when I first did the first drawing. So I don't know, but I think at 500, I think everybody would have blocked me on the internet and said, go away, not another one of these.
I don't think there's any chance of that happening, Edward, just on my end. I don't think anyone's going to tell you to stop making them. So I wouldn't worry about that. Do we have any questions? I think we have the ability to actually call on people. I don't know how to do that, but someone behind the scenes can.
Yeah, so Geeka is here, and she has a question.
Hi, y'all. Thank you very much. I'm curious about when you both talked about your families and your families also doing artwork. I'm curious about what's different for your perception of what's different for your children's experience of growing up in an artist's home versus your experience growing up. And what difference do you think that'll make in their lives? Because one of the things I thought about when you were saying that is you're really role modeling for them. So they're going to learn something just from the fact that you're living your artwork and you're being parents.
I mean, I would like to hear, I mean, Edward's kids are a little bit further down the line than mine, so he might have a little bit more perspective on that. I will say that for me, I didn't grow up in an artistic household. I grew up in a very creative household. Like a lot of my people ask me like, where's my like sort of vast, you know, I have a really wide definition of creativity, and where does like my attitude come from? It comes from growing up in a rural area, watching women cook and sew and craft, and my dad, you know, all my aunts doing that stuff, and then my dad building a barn, and you know, that this kind of, you know, watching people be creative in modes that we don't necessarily think of as art has really influenced how I feel about it. But for me, I didn't know what an artist looked like or what they did, or, you know, I felt like so much of my young life was about piecing together what an artist was. And everyone around me when I was growing up, I mean, no one had any idea that you could make a living, and I'm not really sure you can, but you know, there's this whole idea that you could make a life out of art. That wasn't really accessible to me. So I think that is probably one thing that my kids have gotten, but I would love to hear from Edward, like what your kids think about it.
Well, I mean, I think they are busy doing, you know, making art and writing all the time. And I think the good thing is we, you know, it's kind of by accident. And I think that's the best way anything can happen is that, you know, if I've got ink out and I'm drawing with a pen and ink, they'll go, oh, I'll have a go at that, and off they go, and you know, that's great. Or if, you know, whatever, they'll try it. Or if we start to put together, you know, create a monster out of found objects, they'll want to do it. And I just think, you know, anything's open. We can, you know, you can do it, and you know, late at night they'll be writing their stories and things like that. But we never, you know, it's all free and easy, and they just picked it up on their own. I think they would have done it without us anyway. I mean, I grew up in a not an artistic household. I was supposed to go into the Royal Navy, and I had to go to a naval school for 5 years, which did not suit me at all. But I wasn't very good at it. But my parents were always very encouraging. I was kind of always drawing, but there was nobody there. And I think they're also themselves. I think our kids, you know, if we were doing something else, they'd still be busy creating. But I think finding that way of yeah, you just, I love what you said, Austin, about you'll be miserable if you don't do it, of actually finding, of going, oh, you know, I did this. You can, you know, look at that. Something is just, it's wonderful. And each, you know, my daughter started this new way of drawing faces, and so she's now, you know, like in the other room there's 50 faces all over the floor, and it's just like, whoa, let's do it. And that is just wonderful. But you know, art, drawing, and it has that visual thing, so people can pick it up. Writing is harder to pass on, because You know, you're in a room on your own, and all the interesting stuff is hidden. But they see it, you know. And I have to say, I love the fact that each time Elizabeth's just published a book of short stories, and the books will arrive, and you know, Elizabeth and I will go, yeah, that's fantastic. Look at these. The kids will go, another one.
It's a great humbler. Your children are like, because they just don't care. It's impossible. I don't know how people have egos who have children, because it's just they just don't care. They think of you as dad and or, you know, mom or whatever. And I would like to say, though, I mean, the thing that I can't figure out how to write about is that my kids have set me free. It's not that I've given them all this stuff. You know, people ask me all the time, like, oh, you must be doing all these great things with your kids. I'm like, I leave them alone. I leave them alone. I let them see me working. I'm around, I'm in their life, but then I leave them alone, and they pick up things that they love, and I don't stop them. I whatever they need, I provide, but I'm not like a teacher. People are always like, well, what are you teaching your children? I'm like, I'm not a teacher. I'm more like a librarian or a studio assistant. I'm creating the environment in which they can do things. And they have set me free, because by watching them do their work unfettered, it's jazzed me up. I'm back into music because my son Owen loves music. You know, I'm back into drawing because Jules is such a, you know, great drawer. They have set me free. You know, they have changed my work. And they have given me, you know, that is, I mean, I would not recommend kids necessarily. I'm not a great evangelist for having children, but I will say that having artistic roommates, I've never lived with artists before, other than my wife, who's intensely creative and a wonderful writer. But I've never lived with little crazy artists before, and it's set me free. It's made my life better. So I would like to, so that's how I feel. Are there any other questions?
Can I just add a really quick story? When I was a teenager, my mom volunteered at the Little Theater in Baton Rouge. And I don't remember where this came from. One day I looked at her and said, I think you need to go back out to the Little Theater. So your kids know what's going on.
Yeah.
And when you're miserable, they see it. And when they see how you respond and how you do your work and that how important that is, it leaves a big impression. So thank you very much.
That's a beautiful,
Thank you
that is
for your
a
question.
beautiful point. They are sensing, they get all, they don't have to hear anything. They can sense it. They can feel it. And it's important. I think it was Carl Jung who said, you know, there's no bigger impact on a kid than the unlived life of the parent. You know, the unlived lives of our parents, that is one of our big influences. So we have to gotta do your thing.
All right. I saw another question that the theater point segues into really quick, which is, Edward, you mentioned your life as a playwright too, that part of your life. And how does performance or acting play into any of your writing? And I think I'm remembering the question right. We can scroll back to it, but how does acting or performance basically influence your work overall, since you've spent so much time in theater?
That's an enormous amount. I mean, I feel like I'm always, I almost always write in first person. And so when you're doing that, you have that active ventriloquism, you have to become that person. It's a piece of acting. And so I did the audio book I was Geppetto for the Swallowed Man. But I miss that thing of theatre. I was in London, as I said, just as this was going off. And the night before I came back, I saw a fantastic production of Chekhov's Uncle Vanya. And it was packed. It was as if it was the last night of theatre in the world. And I feel for God knows, we've all been through so much, but I'm lucky, Austin's lucky, you know, so many of us lucky that we have self-contained art. that it's so much harder for theatre, for example. But I love theatre. I miss it. I'm a frustrated actor. And was in something called the National Youth Theatre as a kid, and at university I was Hamlet in a university production. And to give you an idea of how good my Hamlet was, someone said that it reminded them of Mickey Rooney. So there we are. But I love that creative, the theatre world, that feeling of, oh God, you know, I have to say. I miss theatre more than anything else. This long year. I miss museums desperately, but to be in a piece of theatre, it's like living again. That whole business of play. You know, we all play as kids. You know, that joy of it when you make things up. And one of the things that the illustrations for this new book I'm writing. All the characters are done as if they're from cardboard theatres. You know, those little, the Victorian theatres made out of card. So I kind of that business of playing, you know, how else to put this? Hans Christian Andersen made objects fantastically important and have lives of their own. So he could go into a kitchen and suddenly there would be odysseys, boom, you know, there's so many lives out of it. And that's what kids do, is that their connection with objects is so beautiful. I've gone off the theater comment, but yeah, it's all connected. It's all connected.
They call them plays. They're called plays. It is about play. And when kids play, you know, people say child's play like for something that's easy. If you watch children play, it is not easy. There is a lot of passion and fire and frustration too. There is a lightness in the best play, but play is serious work. You know, it's the work of the child, and I think it's the work of the artist. I always have felt like Wes Anderson's movies were plays, and that's why people love them so much, because there's such a feeling of play, not just that they're plays, but that there's playfulness. You know, there's a real sense, and I think you can feel play in people's work. I feel it in your work. You know, I think it just comes out. I think when people are playing, when they make the work, it's playful for the person on the other end.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, this has been wonderful. We've got one last question to round it out. I think this is an interesting way to like maybe wrap it up in a way that could be a completely different diversion. But Sarah's asking about her mom. She just retired, and we've been talking a lot about children, but it's interesting to think about the adults who maybe are not good at play, have not been engaging their creative side, creative life. She'd like to start making art, but is intimidated. What advice would you have for her?
Do it with a 4-year-old. I think that a lot of time, what is interesting to me about the cycle as my parents age is that I see that they need a lot of the things that my young children need. The same kind of care, the same kind of environment, the kind of encouraging environment. So I would just encourage her. You know, I years ago, a Tony Millionaire, who's a great drawer, runs a lot of, he said this beautiful thing. He said he asked his mom, what should I teach my kids? And she said, don't teach them anything. Just give them lots of supplies. So I think you could buy your mom just the best art supplies, put it in a box and send it to her and say, I want you to fill this sketchbook and send it back to me, you know, or something like that. I just, you know, give her or get her, you know, a good drawing table or something. You know, I think the gift of supplies to me is what pops to mind, especially for older folks. What do you think, Edward?
I think that's fabulous. I think making marks on a page, it doesn't matter beyond that. Start off. It's, you know, also we have all this ridiculousness about success. Why do we care about that? It's about the process. That's what actually matters. And the joy of making any mark on a page is a step in the right direction. And my mother, who's 83, and and you know, of course, I haven't seen her all this long time. She's been painting, you know. She just she loves it. And then she said, "I'm not very good at it." Who cares? She's getting better and better, and she's not bad at all. But but she's just play with it, get messy. I mean, I just think that's the joy. Undo the tune, see what happens, and it's not about the product. It's just the piece of art afterwards. It's about the process, about experimenting, getting dirty. We all have to get a bit dirty.
It's not about the noun. It's not about being the artist. It's about the verb. It's about doing the stuff. It's the practice. It's just the doing, the joy. And I think the thing that really bothers me about where I am in my career is so many people, like when I make a new piece of artwork, like I'm making these tape collages, and people keep asking me how I do them, not because they want to do them too. And I'm like, well, get some tape and magazines and start playing. I don't need to show you. If I tell you exactly how I do these things, you will do them, and you'll do them just like me. But if you try to approximate what I'm doing with your own thing, you'll go to somewhere new. Just play. What Edward said, just play, and you will find your own thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think procrastinate, it's come back to process and play. Procrastination and play is driving the process. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, we had the side conversation
Edward.
that y'all have taken what Nike tried to do and made it even more simple. It's not just do it. It's not even do it. It's just do.
Just do. Yeah.
So we have enjoyed this immensely. The three of us, you've sparked so many little side conversations and reminded us what it is to actually attend an event and be with other people, and what it can do. So we're getting even more excited, I think, about the idea of us all coming back together in real life to enjoy these kinds of conversations. But Austin, thank you so much for bringing Edward into our lives. Edward, thank you so much for saying yes. As I commented the other day, to a whole bunch of people who have this crazy idea of getting up in the morning and talking about creativity at an insane hour. Thank you both so much for being here and being a part of this Austin community. Hopefully we'll see you at HEB sometime randomly, and we'll be able to see each other's noses in real life.
One day.
One day.
All right.
Those of you who showed up today, thank you for being here. We hope that you have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you next month. And taking a note from Austin and Edward, do.
Have a creative morning, everybody. Awesome. That was really cool.